Okay, hold on, everybody. Okay, hold on. That's okay.
Yeah, I've been used like
I'm doing almost nothing tomorrow. That's or Sunday. I need to be, my flight is out of here on Sunday, so I'll get out of here.
Exactly.
Oh, is it really? I mean, do you mind giving me your number? Yeah, right now.
Hold on.
But,
Yeah, I'm very excited to talk to you.
too.
So I'm glad you're able to do this. What is
so
it?
it's 336.
All right, they're not really listening, but it won't really matter.
Oh, funny.
336.
404 8142. So just text or
Yep.
call. So tomorrow I'm gonna get up and probably get a run in or something. I was gonna race. I don't think that's gonna happen.
Okay.
You know, I've been 2 weeks of just like all out.
Yeah.
And I actually just want to sort of enjoy tomorrow. I might jump in Sunday morning at like the CEO job or something. But, you know, so what's your schedule? Are you racing?
I'm running tomorrow, yeah.
Okay.
But I tell you what, I think I would like to do this tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah. What time are you going off?
The morning.
So you're doing the beast?
I am doing the beast,
Okay.
and it'll probably take me 5 or 6 hours.
So why don't we, like, you want to think about maybe, but we can adjust it, but think about like before like dinner time or something like
Yeah,
that.
so after I finish, I'll kind of regroup, go back, shower, rest up a little bit, and then just
That's
meet
fine.
whatever.
And if something happens and we need to do it Sunday morning or something, then that's fine too. Perfect. So
Well, I
again,
appreciate
my
you getting me in.
apologies.
And don't worry about it all, but I appreciate it on your end because I realize you're
Totally happy.
doing a lot.
I made myself available. I looked you up, and you know,
Thank you.
I'm excited about being on. You have to tell you ask. You know, I like having conversations with people that ask good questions and that are curious.
Well, thank you.
You know, so I'm looking.
Well, I'm
forward
glad it comes through, and I look
All
forward
right,
to it. Thanks, Charlotte. Plus, you have a really cool name. Hey, well, you said it. I said it. All right, folks. Sorry about that. So we're gonna get rocking and rolling with this week's What I Learned, and we're live. I'm trying to position this so my face, so Yuns can see my face. But let's rock and roll. There's a little bit of background noise. I apologize for that. Let's get rocking and rolling. And I'm using a new recording device. That's pretty cool. So I'm going to hit record right now. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of What I Learned This Week. I'm live on location, so I apologize for any background ancillary noise. And I also want to point out that I'm using my handy-dandy new H1N Zoom recorder. So this is pretty cool. It's a new unit that I recently purchased to make interviewing on the road, interviewing live in person, a bit more convenient and even maybe a little bit more audiologically better. So we're going to dive right into what I learned this week. And as always, if you'd like to opt into my email address where I send this document out every Friday, it's charliespaniard.com. Very simple. I don't send a lot of emails. The ones that I do send are powerful and tend to have meaning. Pretty much the only one I send is this, what I learned this week. Again, 7 bullet points from the things that I learned this week, and it's been a good week. So this weekend is the Spartan World Championships in Lake Tahoe, and it's really fitting that I just finished Joe DeSenna's book called The Spartan Way. Very, very good, very easy book to read with some very implementable principles for both you and I. So I highly recommend that book. But we're going to start with a bullet point from that book. Joe DeSena describes integrity as this, quote, "It means to fully be who you are, authentic, consistent in your character, and visible in how you live your values." So integrity, if you look it up, we generally think of integrity as doing the right thing even when no one's looking, but integrity also means undivided or whole. So if you live integritiously, he's saying, he as well as many other people are saying, is to be fully who you are, authentic, consistent in your character, and visible in how you live your values. So your character is your makeup. It's not your chemical makeup, but it's your makeup of values. That's your character. If you value loyalty, if you value hard work, value persistence, etc., all of those things add up to your character. So then how much aligned is your character with the way you live your life, the values in your character? Do they all equate to, this is what I believe, this is who I am, and this is how I act? It seems quite simple, but it's not always easy. I love that concept, the idea of simple versus easy. It's very simple. It's right there in front of you. These principles, the Spartan Way principles, are very simple, but they're not always easy because life is not always easy. It's not smooth. It doesn't always go the way we explain. But it could be easy How could it be easy? By choosing to make it easy. Remember with the Spartan Way principle, I believe it was number 5 or 6, prioritization. Time management is easy once you prioritize, because once you prioritize, once you have your values locked and loaded, the decisions are easy because it works in a hierarchy of such. Your highest values are first and foremost. Those are there for your decision makers. So it's quite simple, not always easy, but it could be easy. You just got to isolate those values, isolate your character, act in accordance with them. And for the second bullet point, I thought this would be neat. So I finished the book, The Spartan Way, and I started my next book, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, which is quite a variance from what I normally talk about, what I normally read about, because I know zero. Well, can't say that anymore. I read the book, but I know very little about astrophysics. But I thought it would be neat before jumping into that book to recap the 10 Spartan principles, right? Again, it's called the Spartan Way. These are timeless principles that can help you live your life better. They can help me live my life better. Can help kind of all of us one way or another. The 10 might seem overwhelming. So my advice to you is this: pick one and go. Very simple. Pick one and go. Number 1, self-awareness. Number 2, commitment. Number 3, passion, or as I prefer to say, enthusiasm. Number 4, discipline. Number 5, prioritization. Number 6, grit. Number 7, courage. Number 8, optimism. Number 9, integrity. Number 10, wholeness. Those are the 10 Spartan principles. Don't get overwhelmed. Don't have paralysis by analysis. Pick one, get started. Moving on to the next bullet point. In this week's AMX Kids, we're talking empathetic listening and learning, as well as the value of talking. So I'm currently reading the book, The Outsiders, and I say this often, but when I sit down to choose my next AMX Kids book, I suffer from a fair amount of anxiety. I suffer from, oh my gosh, I don't know which book to pick next. Because something happened when I started diving into these kids' books, these middle school aged books. I realized how many of them there are, and I realized how awesome they are. And I realized more and more the valuable lessons that lie within these books. And whether it's for my kids, whether it's for your kids, whether it's for me, whether it's for you, these lessons are timeless. These lessons are extremely valuable. So I'm becoming very obsessive in which books I pick for AMX Kids. But like I said, I'm reading The Outsiders. And what we learn in The Outsiders quick is, dealing with Pony Boy, he's an outsider. But then when you break it down, we're all outsiders in one place or another. On a basketball court, I'm an outsider. On a Spartan race course, not so much an outsider, but I'm still a little bit of an outsider. Put me on a wrestling mat, put me in a cage fistfight zone, I'm all right. So in one way or another, we're all outsiders. But the things that I drive home in this week's AMX Kids is that of empathetic listening and learning. So empathetic listening is understanding, putting yourself in the perspective, putting yourself in the position of the other person, not just saying I feel bad for you, not just being sorry for the other person, but really and truly understanding them, right? Empathetic learning, really and truly caring about learning about those other people, as well as the value of talking. These timeless principles that I'm reading about, learning about, the idea of just don't stop, just keep going. Timeless principle, the value of energy. Timeless principle. Another one of those is just simply the value in talking, period. Sitting down and talking. And with The Outsiders, with S.E. Hinton, she had said she wrote the book as a way to make sense of her life, right? As a way to make sense of her challenges, as a way to figure out what was going on in her world. So whether it's talking, whether it's writing, whether it's recording a podcast, remember AMX to me is essentially me figuring this all out, right? It's real time of me reading these books, having these conversations, and then figuring it up all out. That was a little bit of Enrique there. So if you're not already into AMX Kids, please consider listening to it. It's good for you. It's good for your kids. It's good for me. It's good for my kids. AMX Kids, new episodes come out every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. So moving on to the next bullet point, which is the beginning of a new book that I started. And I actually, at the time of this recording, which is Friday afternoon, I've actually already finished reading this book. It's a concise book. It's called Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, lending itself to actually being for people in a hurry. I was able to read the book quickly. So why in the world am I reading a book about astrophysics? I'm the Spaniard. I was a wrestler. I like Spanish. I like fighting. I like adventure sports. I like biographies, autobiographies, etc. So why in the world am I reading a book about astrophysics? And why should you care? How about, let's even say it that way. Why? I make an assessment. I make a judgment when I pick books. You know, it's obviously I have to like it, but I really like to be able to connect it to you. So why would I read a book about astrophysics when I knew virtually nothing about it? Well, the answer is because its author, Neil deGrasse Tyson, makes it sound awesome. That's why I read the book. That's why I thoroughly enjoyed the book. That's why I recommend you reading Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, even if you could care less about science. Look, I was your standard middle schooler, high schooler, young adult before I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson. And I thought, wow, I really like to read this book about astrophysics. The thing that I gained most, and I'll still be talking about it next week on AMX, the thing that I gained most from that book, which I think is super, super valuable and important for everyone, is the idea of perspective. Understanding our place in the universe. The book starts out by bringing that to light, the idea that as kids or as people, we look up in the universe and we wonder why it all is and where we fit in this universe, and the awe and the wonder of what's out there and the mystery, and it's popular culture. I mean, all the space shows, all the space movies, it's popular culture. It's something we care about. And this book does a great, great, great job of putting it all into perspective. In the last chapter, and I'll say this on AMX next week, and I'll say it over and over again, the last chapter of the book is one of the best chapters I've ever read, because the way it was written, the points it was making, it was absolutely fascinating. Again, astrophysics for people in a hurry. I promise, I don't like to promise, I don't like to make absolutes, but I promise that your mind will be blown by the facts in this book. Add in the philosophy of it, and boom. It's explosive. Moving on to one of the bullet points, or one of the facts from the book, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. Did you know that the Big Bang happened 13.8 billion years ago? 14 billion years ago is when the Big Bang happened. The Big Bang is the scientifically accepted event that caused listen to this, because of it, our universe went from, quote, just again, this perspective of how big or how little we are. You know how as kids often will think that the world revolves around us? Well, Neil deGrasse Tyson builds on that idea and lets us know how, by learning about astrophysics, that can be put back into perspective for us. So because of the Big Bang, our universe went from, quote, 1 trillionth the size of the period that ends this sentence to what it is today. 1 trillionth. Try to break that down. Try to cut a period in half. Try to cut a period in quarters. Try to cut it in eighths. Try to cut it in 16ths, 30 seconds, 64ths. And then try to visualize, conceptualize how you could actually break that down into trillionths. So because of the Big Bang, which happened 14 billion years ago, the universe went from, quote, 1 trillionth the size of the period that ends this sentence to what it is today. And what it is today is 46 billion light years and expanding. Now, to put even further context and further mind-blowing stats on your what I learned this week plate, dinosaurs only became extinct 65 million years ago. So we have 14 billion. That's really old. Then we have dinosaurs, which are really old, 65 million. So the Big Bang, it's just freaking incredibly fascinating to learn of the depth of our universe. Holy stinking moly. Moving on to our interview, Thursday's episode number 197. This was with a guy named Brett Chapman. So recently on AMX, it's probably been a month ago now, I studied Burma Heart at Wounded Knee. Now, I had read Wisdom of the Native Americans. I had read Awakening Spirits. These books have to do with Native American history and culture and spirituality and connection to the natural world, something that I'm becoming more and more and more interested in. And I put out a post one day about Burma Heart at Wounded Knee, and a guy named Brett Chapman tweeted me, and he said, I have a direct connection to some people involved in this book. I'm a relative, a descendant of some of the people involved in this book. So I naturally wanted to talk to Brett, because anytime you have the ability to bring whether it's a book, I'll use book because it's specific here, but to bring a book to life by speaking with the author or by speaking with, again, a descendant of the content of the book, to me, that's really neat. It adds a depth of learning. It adds a depth of knowledge and wisdom and connectability to the love of learning that I have. So I asked Brett if he'd be on my show. He was on my show. And what we have is a very real conversation about the history of the Native Americans in our country. And it's not always something that everyone wants to talk about. And I'm learning about it. I bring this learning to the plate from the perspective of I'm like a child who wants to learn and ask questions. And I'm always fascinated to learn more. I'm always interested to hear different perspectives or different points of view. So it is really the art of learning, not to borrow Josh Waitskin's title of his book there, but it's really the art of learning and a curious mind, not to borrow Brian Grazer's title of his book, A Curious Mind, The Art of Learning, 2 great books based on learning and asking questions. But it was just a really fascinating conversation. And in that episode, Brett Chapman says this: anybody that thinks that the government is inherently good for people needs to take a close look at the experience of Native Americans on reservations, because it wasn't an easy time. What this book did for me, again, it goes back to perspective. And the more I read, the more I learn. I feel like that's becoming one of those timeless principles, or one of those most important principles, is that of perspective. It helps you understand, as an American, as a 37-year-old American, I think when you have kids, you start to see the world differently. And when you start to see the world differently, new things pop out at you. Maybe you want to learn more things. Maybe you want to experience more things. But for me, the history, not just of our country, but history in general, knowing where I came from, knowing why things are the way they are, has become very important to me. So it's very interesting and something I'd recommend to everyone. Pick either The Wisdom of the Native Americans, which is a much shorter, condensed book, or Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. Give one of those 2 books a listen and familiarize yourself, if you haven't already, with the history of the Native Americans in our country. It's a fascinating history. It's one that has made me a more competent human, I believe, a more competent American. And like I said, it's something I highly recommend. Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, History of the Native Americans. Take one of those books and dive into it. And then the last topic I'm gonna dive into, I'm smiling and I'm laughing because of how mind-blowing this book, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, has been to me. It just adds depth, it adds perspective to the size. I'm from Hollidaysburg. Hollidaysburg is in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is in the United States. The United States is in North America. But it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it gets to be so stinking huge that it's mind-blowing. So I want to read this quote from the book to give you another fresh perspective to blow your mind. So Neil deGrasse Tyson says, Earth as a cosmic object is remarkably smooth. If you had a super duper jumbo gigantic finger and you dragged it against Earth's surface, oceans and all, Earth would feel as smooth as a cue ball. What the H? Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Did you hear that? If you had a super duper jumbo gigantic finger and you dragged it against Earth's surface, oceans and all, Earth would feel as smooth as a cue ball. Mount Everest is 29,000 feet. Oceans cover, I believe it's 70%. I think oceans cover 70% of the Earth. If you rubbed your finger against Earth, it would feel as smooth as a cue ball, indistinguishable from a cue ball. Well, how can that be? Because when you measure Earth against the universe, you realize, by way of astrophysicists and scientists like Neil deGrasse Tyson, how stinking big the universe is. There you have it, folks. And I'll be back on Monday for AMX. Again, studying. I think I have 2 more days of studying astrophysics for people in a hurry. So I sincerely appreciate you tuning in to what I learned this week. As always, I highly suggest that you subscribe to the show. I put out a lot of content. And the best way to get that content sent directly to you, look, if you don't want to listen to it all, you don't have to listen to it all. But I'm putting it out there, and it's helping me, and it's going to help you. Subscribe to the Spaniard Show on iTunes or whatever podcast app you use. Just type in Spaniard. It'll come up. AM Excellence is short. It's 8 minutes. It's based on the books I read. Don't tell me you don't have enough time. You do have enough time. Let's go back to Spartan principle number 5, prioritization. Once you have prioritization, once you're prioritized, time management is easy. Make this a priority. Make learning, make lifelong learning a priority. CharlieSpaniard.com has, if you'd like to opt in the email list, CharlieSpaniard.com/booking has my speaking programs, etc., etc., etc. And probably the easiest, the least resistance to you, I love to geek out about learning in books. And I have on my website, if you click on my reading list, I have all the books that I read. So if you read one of those books and want to talk about it, I'd love to talk to you about it. So reach out to me on social media at Charlie Spaniard. And you know what? My advice to you is read a book. See you, folks. All right, there we go. That's it. I'm using my mouth, but really I got to hit finish. So have yourselves a great weekend. See ya.